People think archaeology is Indiana Jones. Mostly it's spreadsheets and mud. I'm a field mapper. I turn ruins into numbers, distances, angles, 3D scans. If a stone is out of place, I see it in the data before I see it with my eyes. That's why what happened in that jungle temple still keeps me awake. Because the data said the building we were inside did not exist. We were in Central America, I won't say where, working with a small team that used LiDAR to find buried architecture under the canopy. You've seen those lost city headlines. It's not magic. The laser scans through the leaves, bounces off stone, and suddenly what looked like random hills becomes a grid of plazas, causeways, and temples. This one wasn't a city. It was a single, isolated complex on a ridge, almost completely swallowed by roots. Our LiDAR operator, Miguel, brought me a render the second night. "Check this out," he said, dropping onto the camp chair next to me. I thought it was noise at first. On his laptop, the canopy vanished. In its place, a rectangular platform with steep sides and at the top a cluster of structures, one larger central mass, flanked by smaller rooms. "What's weird about it?" I asked. He zoomed in. The central building's walls were too thick. Not just for that culture. For any culture. "They either built this like a bunker," he said, "or the scan is lying." We both knew the scan wasn't lying. It took us 2 days to cut a path. The jungle there doesn't want you. Vines hook your clothes, ants find your boots instantly, and the air feels chewed and spat back out. When we finally reached the ridge, the temple was just shapes under moss and strangler figs. The rooms from the scan were lumps under roots. The central building looked like a hill someone had carved corners into. We cleared just enough to find a doorway, a narrow rectangular opening at the base, half full of fallen stone and soil. Our lead, Dr. Elena, stood there with that look of someone standing between grant money and career suicide. "Half an hour inside," she said. "We check air, take some photos, get a feel for the layout. No heroics, no deep penetration. Keep radios on, no one alone." I clipped my headlamp, checked my handheld scanner, and followed her in. The air inside was cooler, like stepping into a stone lung. My boots sank slightly into centuries of dust and bat droppings. The beam of my headlamp cut through floating particles, revealing walls covered in faded stucco and carved glyphs, eaten by mold. "Passage slopes down," I said into the radio. "About 10 degrees. Behind us, Miguel stayed at the entrance, his tablet connected to the scanner on my chest. "Copy," he said. "I'm getting rough geometry. The corridor narrowed, then opened into a small chamber, roughly rectangular. Empty, except for rocks and a toppled fragment of some statue. I swept the walls. "First chamber," I reported. 4 by 5 meters. One exit only, the one we came through. "Got it," Miguel said. "Move on when you're ready." There was another passage on the opposite wall, partially blocked by collapsed stone. We squeezed through. The second corridor felt wrong immediately. The angles weren't straight. The floor tilted slightly to the left, but the ceiling tilted to the right. Your brain doesn't like that. My scanner pinged softly as it updated. "Another chamber ahead," I said. We stepped through, same size, same shape, same layout. Only this one had a low stone bench along one wall and a broken ceramic bowl in the corner. Elena frowned. "Feels copy-pasted," she murmured. "Maybe it's a repeated ritual room," I said. We marked the position with chalk on the wall, a symbol, and moved on. This pattern repeated. Passage, chamber, slight variations, a niche here, a fallen lintel there, a different arrangement of stones on the floor. In each room, I made a quick 3D sweep. The scanner chirped, sending data back to Miguel. After the fourth chamber, he spoke up in the radio. Guys? Are you sure you're moving forward?" Elena pressed her mic. "What do you mean?" "Because according to this, you're walking through the same room," he said. "Over and over. The point cloud is, it's almost identical each time." "Almost," I said. "We're not robots. The scanner won't be at exactly the same angle." "No," he insisted. "I mean walls, dimensions, ceiling height, all within 2 centimeters of each other. It's like someone copy-pasted the architecture in a grid." I looked around. In this chamber, the 5th by our count, There was a pile of small stones in one corner, like someone had deliberately stacked them long ago and then knocked them over. I checked the chalk mark. My stomach dropped a little. "Did either of you draw that?" I asked. Eleanor turned. On the wall near the entrance, someone had scratched A into the plaster with something sharp. Our mark from the previous room. "I left that in the last chamber," she said, "not here." "Maybe we looped," I said. "Maybe the corridors guided us around." I pulled up the scanner's minimap. The path we'd walked looked like a straight line. No loop, no curve. The temple interior, according to my device, was completely logical. The rooms weren't. "Head back," Miguel said. "Now, I want to see if the geometry changes when you try to exit." We didn't argue. We turned to the doorway we'd just entered through. The corridor beyond sloped slightly up, exactly as expected. The air tasted faintly of outside. We walked. "Passing through Chamber 3, I said automatically, even though the room count no longer meant anything. We entered the next chamber. On the floor, in the dust, were our footprints, fresh, crisp edges, chalk from my pack strap where I'd brushed the wall. On the wall itself, 4 symbols, one under the other, scratched deep with something sharp and hurried. I hadn't drawn the last 2. "Elena," I whispered. She was staring at the marks, her face drained of color. "I only did 1 and 2, she said. "I never got to 3 or 4. I thought about it. I thought, if this keeps going, I'll number all of them. But I didn't." "Guys," Miguel said in our ears, "your position hasn't changed on my map. You're still in the same footprint as before. You're not moving in the model. It's like the temple interior refuses to update." "Can you see the corridor we're in?" I asked. A pause. "No," he said. "On the scan, you're standing in solid stone." We tried logic. We marked the floor with arrows, drew lines on the walls, left my glove in one chamber doorway and walked on. We passed. The glove again, the same crack in the plaster shaped like a lightning bolt, the same fallen chunk of ceiling with the same smear of moss. Every time my scanner insisted that we were somewhere new. Every time Miguel told us we were standing in the same point. "I'm pulling you out," he said finally, voice shaking. "Turn off the scanner and walk backward, counting steps. Forget the map. Just go." We did. We walked backward along our own footprints, 1 chamber, 2, 3. The air changed. You could feel it. Thicker, warmer. The smell of earth and jungle seeped in under the dust. We stepped through the next doorway and hit sunlight like a bomb. I stumbled, half blind, and nearly fell down the entrance slope. Someone grabbed my arm. One of the porters, eyes wide. "You were gone a long time," he said. 40 minutes, I panted. He shook his head. 3 hours, he said. Back at camp, we looked at the data. The scans from inside the temple were nonsense. Every room we'd been in had nearly identical dimensions, but the software kept trying to collapse them into one volume. The coordinates jittered around, overlapping. At several points, my recorded position moved into the walls, stayed there for a few seconds, then snapped back into the corridor. The audio on my recorder was worse. In the background of our normal commentary, you can hear our footsteps and breathing. But at certain points, our voices double. When I say, first chamber, a second version of my voice whispers, third, half a second later. When Elena says, we mark this one, another version of her, lower, says, we were already here. The scariest part? Near the end of the file, after we'd turned the scanner off and were counting steps to get out, there's a stretch of heavy breathing and boot scuffs. Then, quiet and close to the mic, someone says in perfect Spanish, "Don't leave yet. The last room is different." It's Elena's voice. She never said that. She swears she thought it, but she never let it out of her mouth. We left the temple mostly uncleared. The official report says, unstable internal architecture, high risk of collapse, recommend limited intervention. But I still have the scan on an external drive. Sometimes I open it and try to rotate the model. The outside of the temple is fine, logical, obeys geometry. The central building, the one with the 2 thick walls. The software won't let me take a proper section through it. Every time I try, the program freezes for a second, then quietly closes the file. Like there's a room inside that stone that doesn't want to be seen. And when I walk alone at night, in cities far away from any jungle, I sometimes hear my own voice, half a second out of sync with my thoughts, whispering, "One more room, the last one is different. I don't want to find out what's in it." I've worked in enough jungles to know water is never really still. It seeps, creeps, rises, it brings life and disease, reveals ruins and buries them deeper. But I'd never seen water watch us before. We were shooting a documentary about forgotten jungle temples. You know, the kind of Netflix thing where the voiceover talks about lost civilizations, while the crew sweats through their shirts off camera. Our job? Film an obscure temple complex near a river that only appeared on satellite during the absolute dry season. The rest of the year, the jungle and the water took it back. The locals had a name for the place. Roughly translated, it meant the house that keeps faces. Our fixer, Thomas, told us not to use that name on camera. "Call it anything else," he said. "Jungle Temple 7, Site Delta, whatever. Just not the real name." We laughed. We always do at the start. No one was laughing by the end. Reaching the site was already a nightmare. We followed a narrow, twisting river in small boats until the GPS insisted we were literally in the trees. Then we hacked a path through swampy undergrowth until the ground started to rise. The temple wasn't tall like the big pyramids. It was low and broad, built into a slope that the jungle had almost healed over. Roots crawled over carved walls, and the top had collapsed into a mound of soil and ferns. The entrance we used wasn't original. Water had carved a breach into one side, creating a kind of step-down basin that filled and emptied with the river level. Right now, in the dry season's low point, it was about waist deep. "This used to be a dry stairway," our archaeology consultant Priya said, brushing slime off a carved step. "Water came later." "Cool," our director said. "Can we get a shot from inside, looking out through the flooded entrance? Lanterns in the dark, silhouettes, that kind of thing?" Of course we could. I was camera operator too, B-roll duty, places the main guy didn't want to cram himself into. That meant the flooded stairway was mine. We rigged lights along the entrance, LED panels with warm filters to make the stone pop. Inside, the passage descended gradually toward what had once been the main sanctuary. Now, the lower half of that sanctuary was a black pool reflecting the ceiling. When I first stepped in, it felt like walking into someone else's mouth. The air was stale, humid, heavy with the smell of mud that had been underwater for too long. The ceiling was low, supported by square stone pillars. The walls were crowded with shallow carved figures, rows of faces staring outward, eroded but still unnervingly expressive. "Check this," I called out. "The walls are packed." Priya joined me at the threshold, headlamp cutting across the carvings. "They're not gods," she said quietly. "These are petitioners, ordinary people, see, different hair, different jewelry. It's like they carved everyone who came here." "You mean they made portraits?" I asked. "As close as this style gets," she said. "We don't see this often. It's like the temple wanted to remember everyone who stepped inside." I looked at the water below the last step. It was totally still. Not a ripple. "Where's the inflow?" I asked. "We're way below river level. This should be moving." "Subsurface channels, probably," she said. "It's feeding in and out from somewhere deeper. You just can't see it." "Super comforting," I muttered. We set up the shot. The idea was simple. I'd stand on the last dry step, half lit by our panels, filming the reflection of the ceiling and walls in the water, then slowly tilt up to reveal the actual carvings. I framed it. It looked gorgeous. The reflection was almost a perfect mirror, the faces warped slightly by the uneven surface. In the water, the temple looked upside down, and more alive somehow, like everything belonged there more than in the dry world. "Rolling," I said. I did the move. Start in the reflection, slow tilt up, land on the carvings. Review looked great. We did it again from a different angle, then a third, wider. Each time the water stayed weirdly still, like glass. "Let's go handheld near the edge." the director said over radio. Get closer to the water. Make it feel intimate, almost like it could pull the viewer in. I stepped down one more step, boots almost at water level. The air felt different there. Colder, but only from the knees up, like the cold was floating instead of rising. I brought the camera low, lens just above the water, capturing my own light reflected. That's when I saw it. In the tiny on-camera screen, among the hundreds of eroded stone faces mirrored in the dark surface, one was not stone. One face was sharp, modern, alive. Mine. For a second, I thought it was some dumb reflection trick, angle, lens, light. But no. The stone faces above the waterline were crude. Flat eyes, heavy noses, stylized mouths. In the water, they warped appropriately. Then, in one section of the reflection, I saw a face with my exact eyebrows, my beard, my stupid crooked nose from a snowboard accident. Same light. Same angle. Except when I tilted the camera up to find the original carving on the wall, the one that reflection should belong to, there was nothing that matched, just more worn, anonymous petitioners. I swallowed. Priya, I said, come look at this. She stepped down beside me, careful not to slip. See that? I pointed at the monitor. Tell me I'm crazy. She looked, her forehead tightened. Do it again, she said. Tilt up. I did. The camera showed water, upside-down temple, faces, mine. Tilt up, real stone, no modern face. Tilt back down. Water. My face, closer now, clearer. Behind us, from the entrance, Thomas called down. We shouldn't stay long, he said uneasily. The river can rise faster than the forecast. This place floods without warning. We're almost done, the director called back. Priya's voice dropped. It's mimicking you, she whispered. It's copying you into the wall. That's insane, I said automatically. The water moved. Just a shiver, as if something far below had exhaled. The reflection of my face seemed to drift slightly, separating from where the actual light paths should go. It looked, for one awful moment, like someone under the surface was standing at the same spot as me, but one step deeper, looking up. We got out of there. We told ourselves it was just optical distortion. The temple steps were uneven, the water depth variable, the angle of the lights tricky. We kept working. As the day went on, we shot other rooms higher up the slope. Niches, smaller shrines, collapsed corridors where tree roots had taken over like veins. But the air felt wrong everywhere. Heavier, full of a pressure that had nothing to do with humidity. Just before sunset, clouds rolled in faster than the forecast predicted. Lightning grumbled far away. The river rose a few centimeters in minutes. We need closing shots in the sanctuary, the director insisted. It's the most cinematic space. We can't leave without it. Thomas swore in Spanish under his breath. You don't want to be inside that room after dark, he said. People used to say, if you saw yourself in that water at night, the temple would keep you. Nobody listened. Documentaries are expensive. We went back down. The water had risen. Only 3 steps were still above the surface now. The carved walls were closer, their lower rows already submerged. The reflected faces in the water were distorted. Some halves above, some halves below. The LED lights we'd left secured were still on, casting warm patches across the stone. It should have felt cozy for ruins. It didn't. We set up quickly. Just a final pan, the director said. Start on the water, move to the walls, end on the doorway, easy. I went to the familiar spot, feet on the last step, camera low. I did the move. Water, walls, doorway. As long as it doesn't start rearranging stuff in the edit, we're good, I joked weakly. Check playback, the director said. We did. On the second take, mid-pan across the water, something was off. It took a moment to see it. Along the right side of the frame in the reflection, one carving's face was changing, frames apart. At the start of the shot, it was just another anonymous figure. Eyes, nose, mouth. 8 seconds in, its features looked familiar. Nose a little sharper. Eyes deeper set. 10 seconds in, there was no mistaking it. It was the director. In the reflection, not on the stone. He stared at his own face on the screen, color draining. Priya scrubbed frame by frame. The real wall carving above the waterline never changed. Only the version in the reflection did, and once the new face fully formed, it didn't move with the rest of the reflection exactly right. When the water shivered, everything else warped, but that face held shape for a fraction of a second longer than it should, like it belonged to something with inertia of its own. Then we heard the first splash, not from our steps, not from gear. From the far corner of the sanctuary, deep in the water, near where the old altar must have been. Slow, deliberate, like a bare foot stepping into a pool. "Time to go," Thomas said sharply from the doorway. "Now!" We didn't argue this time. We climbed the steps as the water licked higher, carrying cables and tripods, hearts banging. As we reached the entrance, the LED panels flickered. Every light in the sanctuary dimmed, flared, then pivoted, as if something had shifted their angle, but we hadn't touched them. The last thing I saw, before the natural light blinded my contrast, was my own reflection in the water again. Except I wasn't standing there anymore. We broke camp that evening. Storms were forecast. We had our excuse. Weeks later, back in the edit bay, we went through the footage. A lot of it was beautiful. Jungle, stone, light. Easy to over-narrate. We never used the flooded sanctuary shots, because on every take, no matter the angle, no matter who was operating the camera, the reflection in the pool eventually produced a face that wasn't on the wall. Not some ancient priest, not a generic god. Us. Sometimes clear, sometimes half-formed, stretched, blurred. In one shot, if you stabilize and zoom just right, you can see 3 faces in the water that don't match any carving: mine, the director's, and Priya's. They're all looking up. Their eyes are a little too dark. Their mouths are a little too close to the surface. And on one frame, just one, almost a glitch, all 3 of those reflected faces are looking in the wrong direction. Not at the lens, not at the doorway, at something deeper in the water behind them. We cut around that sequence. No one outside the team ever saw it. The official line was, "Footage corrupted by moisture." But sometimes, when my monitor goes to sleep and shows my warped reflection on the black glass, I remember how still that water was, and how eager the temple seemed to be to learn what we look like. If I had listened to the guide, we'd all be rich and bored instead of awake at 3 a.m., listening for our own names in the walls. He told us one thing over and over. Don't say your full name inside the temple. Don't joke with the stone. And of course, we laughed. Treasure hunters always laugh at the beginning. We weren't professionals like archaeologists. We were the other kind of expedition. Ex-military with good lungs and bad decisions. One local fixer who knew too much and said too little, and me. The guy with enough surveying skills to pretend we had a plan. There were 4 of us. Me, Daniel Reyes Mark, blunt instrument, strongest physically, weakest filter Silva. Quiet, ex-demolition, now logistics, Raoul, our local guide, born 3 villages away, never smiled near the tree line. We'd heard rumors of a jungle temple off the main trade routes. Unlike the ones turned into tourist attractions, this one still had sealed rooms. The story was always the same. They tried to bury it. The jungle helped, which to us translated as, nobody's looted it properly yet. We hiked 2 days through wet green hell to reach the ridge where the ruins were supposed to be. At first, there was nothing but trees. Then, shapes appeared where no trees should grow straight. Lines of stone under moss, steps half-eaten by dirt, a broken serpent head peeking from under roots. The temple sat in the center like a tumor the forest hadn't digested yet. Not tall, not grand, just stubborn. Its exterior carvings were eroded almost flat. You could still see the outline of figures, people kneeling, hands raised, eyes gouged out by time. Pretty, Mark said. Where's the gold? Raoul didn't answer. He was staring at the entrance. This place is wrong, he said quietly. My grandfather told me stories about it. People went in, came back, missing parts. Missing parts? Silva asked. Like limbs? Raoul shook his head. Names, he said. Voices, memories. They forgot who they were. But the temple didn't. We grinned at each other the way men do when someone else mentions a ghost, and all they can see is a locked room and a payday. "What do we call it?" I asked, pulling my notebook. Raoul hesitated. Then he said a word in his language that I couldn't pronounce. "What does it mean?" I pressed. He looked me in the eye. "Where the stone learns your name." From the outside, the entrance was just a rectangular black mouth, low and wide. The jungle had tried to seal it with roots and soil, but a dry season had pulled some of that away, revealing carved jambs. The threshold stone was worn smooth. "Thousands of feet," I murmured. This was busy in its day. "Feet, knees, foreheads," Raoul said. "People crawled inside." "Well, we're walking," Mark said. "We're not here to beg." Raoul caught his arm. "And last warning," he said. "Inside, don't speak your full name. Don't say each other's names as a joke. The temple listens. It remembers. It calls back later." Mark rolled his eyes. "What? It's going to telemarket us?" he said. "Relax. Stone is stone." He walked in first. That would matter later. Inside, the air was thick and grainy like breathing old paper. Our headlamps lit a descending corridor, walls carved with parallel lines of figures. Unlike other temples I'd seen, the style here was almost painfully repetitive. The same kneeling shape over and over, arms raised, head slightly bowed. The floor dipped toward the center. I could almost feel how water must have been guided this way in the rainy season, down into the guts of the building. "Feels like we're walking into a throat," Silva said softly. "Good," Mark replied. "Means there's a stomach somewhere full of offerings." The first chamber we reached was circular, not rectangular. That was unusual. The walls were divided into vertical panels. Each panel had a carved human figure, hands on their own chest, head tilted back, mouth open. There was a shallow basin in the center of the floor, now dry but stained darker than the surrounding stone. "Blood," Mark said, cheerful. "Always a good sign if you're hunting treasure." Raoul stayed near the entrance, flashlight close to his chest. "This is the listening room," he said quietly. "They believed the stone heard the prayers said here, and took them." "Prayers, huh?" Mark grinned. "Hey, stone, don't," Raoul snapped. But it was too late. "My name is Mark Harris, and I pray you cough up something I can retire on." His voice bounced around the chamber. Not in the normal way. There was no echo, no fading repetition. The sound just stopped, like the walls absorbed it whole. The silence after felt heavier than before. "Happy?" Raoul said through his teeth. "You fed it." "Relax," Mark said. "It already knew my voice. Now it knows my portfolio." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Your turn, Reyes. Introduce yourself to the magic wall." I forced a laugh, but some old animal part of me didn't want to. Instead, I said, "I'm nobody," which technically was true enough. Silva muttered his own half-fake name, something he often used crossing borders. Raoul didn't say anything at all. We pushed deeper. Beyond the listening room, the architecture changed. The corridors narrowed, then flared. Niches appeared, some with broken statues, others with piles of small stones. The carvings shifted from human figures to more abstract shapes, spirals, grids, concentric circles like sound waves frozen in stone. In several places, shallow bell-like hollows had been carved into the walls, resonance chambers. You could tell some forgotten designer had really cared about how sound behaved here. I started to understand why the room had eaten Mark's voice without echo. "This whole place is built to trap what people say," I whispered. "Then maybe shut up," Silva replied. We reached the inner chamber after an hour of slow progress, marking our path with chalk and string. The room was surprisingly small, rectangular, maybe 5 by 8 meters. Low ceiling, no windows, no skylights. The only entrance was the one we came through. In the far wall, a carved panel took up almost the entire surface. Dozens of faces packed together. Unlike the outer reliefs, these weren't stylized, they were painfully specific. High cheekbones, crooked teeth, different ages, different expressions, fear, ecstasy, grief. Some of the mouths were open. Some were sewn shut with stone cords. Worst of all, The eyes of every face had been carefully hollowed out deeper than the surrounding stone. Enough to hold something. Enough, say, to once have held gemstones. Or real eyes. "Jackpot," Mark breathed. He stepped forward, practically glowing. "Easy," I said. "Let's think." But he was already there, running gloved fingers over the empty sockets. "Imagine what used to be here," he said. "Jade, obsidian, gold. We're too late for the big stuff, but maybe something rolled down, got stuck in a crack." He knocked on the stone near one of the carved faces. "Hey," he joked. "If you listened so well, tell me where you hid it, yeah?" "Mark Harris is asking nicely." His name sounded wrong this time. Like it had more weight. Like the walls leaned in to hear it. "Stop saying your name!" Raoul snapped. He looked actually afraid now, the kind of fear that makes grown men quiet. "You really believe the rock cares what I call myself?" Mark said, exasperated. "Fine, we'll speed this up." He turned to me and Silva. "Full names," he grinned. "In case the ghost banker in the wall wants to write us a check. Come on 3. 1, 2. Silva shook his head. "I pass." He stepped back. Mark rolled his eyes and looked at me. "Reyes?" I hesitated. For a second too long. "See?" he said. "Even the skeptic is scared." He laughed and turned back to the wall. "Fine, I'll go solo," he said. He squared his shoulders, spread his arms mockingly, and spoke slowly, loudly, like an oath. "My name is Mark Elliot Harris. If there's anything left here that can hear me, remember that." The chamber swallowed his words. Literally. No echo. No residue. Just silence. Then, somewhere deep in the stone behind the carved faces, something clicked. A tiny sound, like a pebble dropping into a hollow. We all froze. I felt it in my teeth. We left, not long after. It wasn't one big moment, just a collection of small, wrong ones. My compass needle twitching in place, my watch skipping a second backward. The stillness of the air, as if the room were holding its breath. "Out," Raoul said. "We have the footage. There's nothing left worth this." Mark grumbled but didn't fight. We followed our chalk marks and string back through the corridors, past the resonance hollows, through the listening room, into the wet green light outside. The jungle hit us like a wave. Sound came back all at once. Insects, birds, distant monkeys, our own footsteps. I didn't realize how much the temple had dampened everything until I heard the world again. We camped that night by a stream. That's when the temple started talking back. It began small. We were sitting around the fire, eating rice and something that used to be chicken, when I heard Mark's voice behind me. "Pass me the bottle," he said. I reached for the water canteen automatically, turned. He was on the other side of the fire, mouth full, staring at his plate. He hadn't spoken, but I had heard his voice, clear, right behind my left ear. The hairs of my neck rose. "Did you just say something?" I asked. He shook his head. "Did you?" he countered. "Maybe the jungle is echoing weird," Silva said. "We've been in stone all day, our brains are tired." We let it go. Later in my hammock, I heard my own voice whisper, "Can't sleep." Except my mouth hadn't moved. I clamped my teeth together and stayed awake until dawn. The second day, it got worse. We hiked back along the same trail, humidity like a hand on the back of our necks. The temple slid behind trees until it was just a darker thought among all the green. Every so often, someone would stiffen and look over their shoulder. "Stop calling me!" Silva snapped at one point. Nobody had said his name. By lunchtime, we'd all heard it, our own names, each other's. Always a little off timing, always from exactly the distance you'd expect a friend to be standing. "Mark," I said once after hearing mine called. "Yeah?" "Did you just say Daniel?" "No," he said. "Did you just say Mark?" We looked at Raoul. He was sweating more than the climb required. "I told you," he said. "You fed it." We made it back to the village by evening. I thought it might stop once we left the jungle. It didn't. In my cheap hotel room, under a slow fan, I showered, changed shirts, tried to feel normal. I sat on the bed. The TV murmured something in a language I halfway understood. Then very softly from the corner where the wall met the ceiling, I heard, Mark Elliott Harris. Full name. Spoken perfectly, syllable by syllable, in a voice that sounded like stone grinding carefully through each letter for the first time. I froze. A second later my phone buzzed. It was Silver. His text was short. You hearing it too? I didn't answer, because the walls in my room had gotten interested. If you've ever been in a place where someone is standing in the next room behind thin plaster, you know the feeling, the sense of presence beyond the surface. This was like that, but thicker, older. Something on the other side of the wall was awake, saying the names it had been given, trying them in different orders, different tones. Mark Elliott Harris, it said. Then shorter, Mark Harris. Then just, Mark, each time closer. I turned the TV up. It didn't help. Mark didn't answer messages the next morning. We were supposed to meet in the lobby, settle accounts, plan the next move. Only Silva and I showed up. Raoul was outside, smoking with hands that shook. Where's Mark? I asked. They both just looked at me. No, I said, he's hungover. He'll show. He didn't. We went to his room. Door unlocked. Bag on the bed, half unpacked. Boots by the wall, phone on the table, still charging. The bathroom was empty, the window was closed. No sign of forced anything. Just an empty room with the faintest echo of his laugh still stuck to the walls. Like the air remembered him more than the space did. The police report said, voluntary disappearance. Locals had another phrase. Raoul wouldn't translate it. It's been 3 years. I don't go into jungles anymore. I don't go into basements if I can help it. I avoid rooms with too much stone. I live in a modern apartment with drywall and glass and metal. Things that, in my head, don't listen as well. It doesn't matter. Because sometimes, when the building settles heavily at night and the hum of the city drops low, I hear it again. From the wall behind my bed, from the floor beneath my feet, from the pipes like veins in the concrete. Names. At first it was his. Mark Elliott Harris. Then, slowly, it got better at mine. Daniel Reyes. At first it sounded like someone speaking with a mouth full of gravel. Now some nights, it sounds almost exactly like my own voice, just a half-second late. Like the temple has finally learned how to say it right. And I know, with a certainty that feels more solid than faith, that if I ever answer out loud, if I ever say yes, back to whatever is practicing my name, it will know wherever it is covered in vines and dust, exactly where to find me. Because stone doesn't forget. Especially not the things we were stupid enough to tell it ourselves.